Hey everybody, so I usually don't ask this, I don't say click like, subscribe, share, or anything like that, but this is one of those few videos where I will actually ask that if you have been following this or know people that are interested in following this story, that you ask them to share or look at this video rather than all the other ones I've done. So rather than having a bunch of 5, 10, 30-minute long videos, I'm going to have one ultimate 30-minute long video that includes a summary of everything that has occurred over the past week, and then the new information that we have, and then at the end of it, it sums it up all into a little ball with what I believe to be are all of the relevant questions and points regarding the issue with Wall Street Bets, Melvin Capital, Citadel, Robinhood, and just everything else. Also, if you have already been following everything that's been going on over the past week and just want the new stuff since my last video, I will include a timestamp up here of where you can just simply fast forward past my summary and get to my questions and analysis of what's been going on. Hey everybody, how's it going? So what I'd like to do in this video is really try to make sense of everything that's gone on over the past week. Again, just continue updating since there's more and more stuff coming out, and give my opinion on what's been going on regarding this whole Wall Street Bets, Melvin Capital, Gamestop, Robinhood disaster of the past week. So over the past few months, you've had people see that GameStop had attention from a new investor that was looking to kind of get more involved in turning the company around, while simultaneously there was a short squeeze of 120 to 140% of the overall float. So you have these short sellers that shorted the stock to 120 to 140%, which means that that is going to result in a short squeeze when they all try to cover. That would cause the price to go up. So you had a bunch of people on Wall Street Bets and Reddit buy in to the stock. As the hedge funds that invested in this were getting short squeezed and close to going bankrupt, you had a larger firm, not the government, but a private firm, bail them out for over $2 billion. That private firm has a relationship with Robinhood. Now, in the few days after this happened, you had the Wall Street Bets subreddit disappear for a short period of time. Their Discord was shut down for hate speech, even though the same stuff has been being posted in there for months, and they claim they knew about it. They turned it down right after the hedge fund gets bailed out by somebody else. You had much of the financial press calling these people Nazis, alt-right. You had other people making allusions to this being similar to hacking and defacing, when in reality all they're doing is purchase a stock that has been shorted to an insane extent. One of the more interesting pieces that I saw in the financial press was when Bloomberg and CNBC were saying that Melvin and Citron and other short sellers had sold out of their short position. Now, Melvin Capital directly benefits from you believing that. If you buy the stock because you're waiting for a short squeeze, it goes up. As the stock goes up, it costs them more money to cover. They would rather cover when the stock is lower in price so that they lose less money, therefore creating an incentive structure for Melvin Capital to get the word out that they covered even if they did not. This was weird for several reasons. The first was that when people were looking at the volume and the trading patterns, it did not appear that the amount that was shorted, this insane amount, had been covered. But more particularly weird was the fact that you had all CNBC paying to promote the idea that Melvin Capital had closed out of its GameStop short position, which is just strange. It's one thing to report it. It's another to pay to get that idea across when that benefits the hedge funds, and the coverage up to that point had been much more, let's listen to the hedge fund perspective rather than the Wall Street Bets perspective. And this has all caused there to be an incredible amount of distrust and aggravation regarding the entire situation. Earlier in the week, you had brokers like Robinhood halting trading, only the buying, but not the selling. There were also users that were actually being forced into selling their positions on the platform. So you had users that did not initiate a sell order that automatically had a sell order initiated for them at a lower price than what they wanted to sell at, which again would benefit Melvin Capital, the hedge fund that was bailed out by Citadel that does business with Robinhood. And you can see that here, Robinhood literally closing out positions against the user's will in GameStop. And you had someone here say, to clarify, I've reached out to several individuals whose accounts have had GameStop foresold, and only about half of them were trading on margin accounts. So the margin call argument, a justified reason for Robinhood to foresell, doesn't hold up for every case. which is interesting. Even if it is technically part of their user agreement, it is a scummy thing to do. Again, if you're trading on margin and they see that volatility and then force sell you out of it, that's different than if you were trading with your own cash. This was weird, and when you combine it with everything that had happened days before, and you combine that with the fact they have a direct relationship with the company that bailed out Melvin Capital, the short seller, and Melvin Capital has an interest in you not being able to buy GameStop, at this point, you have people from all around the country doing something that no one thought was possible over the past 4 years. Unifying. Whether you were Ted Cruz or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whether you were Rashida Tlaib or Donald Trump Jr., whether you were a politician from Texas or a politician from California, for 10 minutes, everybody in America got together and collectively said, "This is some bullshit." This essentially caused the internet to explode. This also caused me to explode. In one video I said, now, I am not a person that calls for violence. I am not a person that calls for pitchforks. There should be a legitimate investigation, and the legitimate investigation that is done should be done in a non-corrupt manner. That investigation should figure out who is at fault and who is going to pay. Then in the video that I did immediately after this, I proceeded to lose my mind. Tell you all, do you think I'm angry for a good reason, or am I actually losing my mind as I actually lost my mind? It is limiting you to buying 65 shares, not $65. And when I actually clicked that link today, it actually looks like they lowered it, because when I checked this yesterday, okay, this is updating in real time. So check, now it says 5. I clicked this earlier today and it said 25 shares. It said that you would be able to buy 65 shares of BlackBerry yesterday. It said 25 when I clicked before doing the video, and now it says 5. So he pointed out here with some analysis why it is they have a vested interest in keeping this stock below $15. If this stock goes above $30, Wall Street gets fucked in the ass. Whereas if it stays below $15, Wall Street makes some good money, at least according to this particular post. Again, I'm not a financial services professional. Please do your own due diligence. And what I find interesting is I'm actually watching this in real time as I am clicking the link. They are lowering the amount of shares that you're allowed to buy. If this goes back to normal on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, this is going to require prison time for people, in my opinion. It requires, at the very least, a serious investigation. This cannot be something where people are just fined, slapped on the wrist. Is there any reason that people shouldn't be angry that you're able to short over 120 to 140% of the available shares of GameStop and then cry mea culpa or cry uncle? Let me know. You think I'm losing my mind? Do you think I have a point? Do you think I'm just angry over nothing? This seems like just so much corrupt shit happening inside of 1 week. Banning, slander, lots of the financial press completely ignoring what is actually going on in favor of a narrative that makes the hedge funds seem like these poor people that are being manipulated by these evil Redditors, and then this. So what I would like to do at this point is try and summarize the questions and concerns that I have with everything that has gone on, and try to really hone in on the concerns and doubts that people who have been following this entire thing have. Now, one person about just close to midnight on the 28th, decided to have a conversation with the CEO of Webull, and this was an interview over here that I linked to in my community section. I thought it was good, and there I also did a video where I listened to the entire video around 1 or 2 in the morning right after he did it, and I gave my questions and my concerns as to what was not answered by this video. So let me just allow him to explain for a short period how this entire thing works and why exchanges like Robinhood would have been incentivized to stop trading.
So to explain it simply, the reason why our clearing firm is not able to support clearance on those specific symbols is simple. We clear through a system called DTC. Back 200 years ago, you would buy a stock and you would pay someone out in front of a buttonwood tree out on Wall Street, in front of where now the New York Stock Exchange sits, and you would hand that person cash, and they would give you a stock certificate, a paper stock certificate. We don't deal in stock certificates anymore because it's inefficient. We trade so much volume now, having all that paper obviously does not work. So companies like DTC were started. DTC is the go-to company. They own this business, basically. They pretty much have a monopoly. There are alternative ways to settle trades, but DTC settles more than 95% of trades that happen on the street. Now, DTC needs to maintain an orderly marketplace, meaning if you sell a share, you are going to receive payment for those shares. That's what they guarantee. In order to guarantee that, they set collateral rates for custodians, right, or clearing firms. So typically, on a typical day, there is 2 days till settlement. You trade today, you have tomorrow, Friday, and then you have Monday. So the stock will settle on Monday. Those 2 days, meaning Friday, and until the funds actually come and exchange hands, so to speak, someone has to fund that trade. And the clearing firm does that. That's one of their jobs. And typically, there's a collateral of about anywhere from 1% to 3%. So if you were selling a share of Apple, that clearing firm until settlement date would pay 2% of the notional value of that trade to DTC that DTC will hold as collateral until settlement happens. Now, because GameStop, AMC, and KOSS are so volatile, DTC has raised that requirement collateral rate to 100%, meaning that for every single dollar that exchanges hands in those stocks, the clearing firm has to send for deposit for 2 whole business days that exact same amount of the notional of the trade. Now, when we're talking about GameStop at $250, $350, billions of shares trading, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that the clearing firm physically has to send in cash to DTCC to hold there for 2 whole business days. And to be frank, the clearing firms are not that well capitalized. They can't do that. So in order to stop the clearing firm from going out of business, they stop the settlement of those shares, resulting in firms like Webull not being able to allow customers to trade those stocks. Right? It's a market dynamic. And what's going to happen?
So what he's pretty much saying there is that the reason that you were not able to purchase shares is because when you purchase shares, the clearing company that is doing the work for the broker is going to put up the money for those shares. And they used to only have to put up a small percentage, as Apple would say, of the money. But due to the volatility, they were asking for 100% of the money. DTC wanted 100% of the money for those shares. And as a result of the clearinghouses not having that money to be put up, the clearinghouses were alerting the brokers and saying, we may not be able to do these trades. Now, one of the questions is, well, if I'm putting up my money, if I'm giving my broker money to buy shares, why can't they simply give that money to the clearinghouse and then use that money to buy the shares? That's an excellent question. That is actually against the law. So as you can see in this Bloomberg article that will be linked in a list of sources below, it says that National Securities Clearing Corp, which is owned by DTCC, up the capital that is needed to guarantee these trades. Now the broker cannot guarantee these trades with the client's cash, a la MF Global. The broker needs to pledge their own capital, and given the massive trading, the amount of capital was substantial. So if you're raising the requirements from a few percent to 100%, that means that the clearinghouse is then going to have to put up that capital. They're not using your money. So if you look up the story of MF Global, you'll see that they are a financial services derivatives broker that went bankrupt. So the idea here is that the clearinghouse puts up collateral that is required. Your cash is not actually what is going to be used initially to make that purchase. The broker cannot do that. The next question you probably have is, wait a second. So if this is an issue of putting up collateral, if this is an issue of money, and their issue is not being able to use my money, why is it that they're allowing selling and not buying? I mean, don't you need, there has to be a buyer for there to be a seller. This is bullshit. You're allowing selling, but not buying. Well, let me try to analogize this to when I make purchases for my company. So if I'm buying a $70,000 shipment of screens from Taipei or South Korea to fix MacBooks, I'm buying $70,000 of screens. It takes about a day for that money to get to the international bank after I send it, and then it takes them 3 to 4 days to DHL or FedEx me the screens. So I have to put up about $70,000 of capital, but then I cannot actually use any of those parts to make money for 4 days until I receive them. When I am purchasing a good, I need to put up capital. I need to put up money before I actually get what I paid for. However, when I'm selling something, I don't need to put up any collateral at all. The other party does. So I need to have money in my bank account. I cannot be the broke ass I was in 2008 or 2009 if I want to buy $70,000 worth of screens. Back then, I was only buying 1 or 2 at a time because I had no money. If I want to buy all those screens, I, as the buyer, need to put up the money to get the product. As a seller of a product, I don't have to put up jack shit. If I already own the share, if I am selling the product, I already have the product. I don't have to put up any money. I don't have to put up any collateral. I say, here's the share. And then the person who is doing the buying has to put up the collateral. Same thing with my screen analogy. If I am going to be selling you screens, you need to put up the money to buy the screens. I don't have to put up money because I have a product to sell you. I can just give you the screens once I have gotten the money. Even if I am homeless, destitute, $0 in my bank account, no money in my pocket, and I'm sitting on the streets homeless, if I have a box of screens and you want to buy the box of screens, I can sell it to you. So the party that needs to be well capitalized and be able to put up collateral in this instance is the buyer, not the seller. That's why the brokers that were better capitalized were able to allow you to purchase stock, whereas the brokers that were poorly capitalized or the clearinghouses that were not properly capitalized for this particular event were only able to allow you to sell and not buy. And this comes to a particular point when you have the broker that is the most famous here, that has connections to Citadel and Melvin Capital by association, is the first one that everybody is noticing is only allowing you to sell. So the question then at that point is going to become, why is it that Robinhood disabled buying but not selling, and other brokers didn't? Well, the other brokers were probably using clearinghouses that were better capitalized. So remember, it's the buying broker, not the selling broker, that needs to be more properly capitalized in order to deal with these trades. So if you raise the collateral requirement from a couple of percent to 100%, that's what's going to separate the Lewises from 2008 from the Lewises in 2020. That's what's going to separate the person that can only buy 1 or 2 screens at the time from the person who can buy 1,000 screens at a time. And this is why you'll see that some of the much more larger brokerages were still allowing you to buy GameStop just fine, whereas Robinhood was limiting your ability to buy GameStop. Now, this is where a couple of questions come up, because the question is now going to become, well, is the issue that Robinhood does not have enough liquidity to deal with this in their clearing solution? So 2 things that need to be brought up here are discussions that I found online where it doesn't appear that Robinhood is properly capitalized, and it doesn't appear that they are using someone else to do all of their clearing. So this is a podcast I found from the CPO of Apex Clearing that a bunch of people have been saying does clearing for Robinhood,
and especially for particularly large transactions, can be a little bit tricky. So you mentioned some of our customers. SoFi is a great example. Stash, Ally. M1, Webull, eToro. These are customers of Apex. Robinhood was our customer from the very beginning. Robinhood eventually went self-clearing, meaning they've in-housed some of that. So Robinhood we no longer count amongst our customers. But you're exactly right in.
So Robinhood, at least from what I'm hearing here, is doing some of their own clearing. So that means that if they're not able to allow you to buy, but they can allow you to sell, this would imply that they are not capitalized well enough. It's a liquidity problem that they don't have the money to put up the collateral to be able to purchase shares of GameStop when the requirements go from a few percent to 100%. And this is where the shit really starts to hit the fan. This is where the distrust hit peak maximum just BS for a lot of people. In this one CNBC interview that I'm going to play for you here.
Led to this? What did the SEC
do as part of normal operations?
But explain then, why did you do this? Did the SEC call you and tell you had to do this? Was there a problem inside the company in terms of liquidity, in terms of the amount of deposits that you had to put in front to the exchanges? What led to this?
Sure, and let me explain exactly how this works. First of all, I want to address some of the misinformation that's been out there, because there's a lot of it. We absolutely did not do this at the direction of any market maker or hedge fund or anyone we route to or other market participants. The reason we did it was because Robinhood is a brokerage firm. We have lots of financial requirements, including SEC net capital requirements and clearinghouse deposits. So that's money that we have to deposit at various clearinghouses. So some of these requirements fluctuate quite a bit based on volatility in the markets. And they can be substantial in the current environment where there's a lot of volatility and a lot of concentrated activity in these names that have been going viral on social media. So we're really in unprecedented times. And in order to protect the firm and protect our customers, we had to limit buying in these stocks. And to be absolutely clear, Go ahead.
But it sounds to me, though, that you're suggesting that there was a liquidity problem inside the firm. And my question about that then...
See, he hits the nail on the head there. So he was saying that due to the larger deposit requirements, that they were putting limitations on your ability to buy. So then he immediately goes in and says, oh, so it seems like that's a liquidity problem, as in you're not properly capitalized to do this. Now, here's where the distrust comes in from everybody watching, and here's why this video has 22,000 dislikes and 2,000 likes. You'll hear it in a second.
Raises all sorts of new questions about whether there's a systemic issue underneath the system and underneath the company unto itself.
No, there was no liquidity problem. And to be clear, this was done preemptively.
So what he just did there is he crucified himself. So he said that the issue is that we would need to put up larger deposits, larger collateral as a result of them, the DTC increasing the collateral requirements. So you need more money. So you're going to disable the ability to buy because it needs more money, but you don't have a money problem. There's no liquidity problem. That right there is pretty much reason that the internet is exploding as you're listening to this entire story. He contradicts himself in this very interview. But how you'll see how there's some, what I interpret as weasel words, and this is what I really want to understand from you, if you think that I'm correct in interpreting this as weasel words, and I'll just rewind this a little bit.
And raises all sorts of new questions about whether there's a systemic issue underneath the system and underneath the company unto itself.
No, there was no liquidity problem. And to be clear, this was done preemptively. So we did this proactively, and thousands of other securities remain tradable on the platform. Customers that held these positions were able to sell them. And we're doing what we can to allow buying and to remove these restrictions.
Okay, so here's where the weasel words comes in. So he's saying that the reason that the ability to purchase these shares was limited or stopped was because the DTC was going to require more money. Check. He's saying that he stopped people from being able to purchase them or lowered it due to the volatility. Check. Then when asked, okay, so do you have a money problem? He says, no, we don't have a money problem. So if you don't have a money problem, then why are you keeping people from purchasing shares when the only thing that would keep them from purchasing shares is a money problem? Now, you see what he says here that makes it weasel words is he says, we don't have a liquidity issue because we were proactive. So what he's saying is, we don't have a liquidity issue because we prevented you from being able to purchase shares. Now, take this back to my laptop screens analogy. Imagine that I wanted to buy 1,000 screens. I didn't want to buy them one at a time and then have to tell customers they have to wait for it to show up and get crappier pricing on them like I did in the old days in 2008 and 9 when I worked out of my apartment and had no money. I'm saying I want to buy 1,000 screens. We want to buy 1,000 screens. It's our intention to buy 1,000 screens for $70,000, and then I only buy one. And then one of my customers says, why are you only buying one? We need you to fix a lot of laptops for us. Why are you only buying one screen at a time? And I say, well, you don't understand. The supplier, in order to buy a lot of screens, they need $70,000 from us. And then the customer looks at me and says, okay, so do you have a money problem? Do you not have the $70,000? Is that why you're only buying one screen at once? And I go, no, I don't have a liquidity problem. I don't have a money problem because I only bought one screen at a time. But I'd love to buy 1,000. Okay, if you want to buy 1,000, then why don't you just pay for it? Do you have a money problem? No, I don't have a money problem because I bought one screen at a time. Do you see how this is weasel words ass shit? Now, when you combine the fact that there are weasel words being used to describe the situation as it's going on, with the fact that a lot of people, frankly, don't even know what the DTC was until this week or that it exists outside of the financial world, you get people to a point where they are incredibly aggravated, have zero trust in you whatsoever, because you already have the conflicts of interest with Citadel. You already have the entire clusterfuck that I've spelled out over the past week. And this is where I mentioned this one thread on Hacker News where they were talking about this. One person says, this sounds like the real reason Robinhood limits the trading of the number of stocks today. If so, why don't they give the straightforward reason? Instead, they resorted to vague excuses like misinformation and for your own good. If someone says, because it is the equivalent of we literally don't have enough money in the bank to allow you to trade on these, which would be a very problematic statement for a trade broker. The equivalent of panic if too many people withdrew from a bank. Few people are actually getting this information, so it's not horrible press for them. And then someone says, LOL, so instead, most of the internet thinks they're colluding with institutional short sellers at hedge funds in order to save them and screw over retail investors. They already had hundreds of thousands of one-star reviews. Someone said communications were undoubtedly terrible. Now, I agree with this. So you have a bunch of people that really don't understand why it is he went up there and gave the answers that he did. They don't seem to make sense. To me, they don't make a lot of sense, and I still do have questions here. Is this a liquidity problem for Robinhood? If they don't have a liquidity problem, is the reason they're saying they don't have a liquidity problem because they limited the trading? It makes sense to me that the reason that the other brokers would be able to allow you to purchase shares of GameStop and BlackBerry, whereas Robinhood would not be able to allow you to, is because the other brokers were using clearinghouses or clearing their own trades that were well capitalized. So if you have a good broker that's actually charging you money for trades where you're actually the customer, where you're not the product, those brokers have enough capitalization to be able to allow you to buy shares, which is why at those other brokers, you could buy and sell. Whereas at brokers like Robinhood, you would only be able to sell because selling is not going to require Robinhood to have put up collateral, but buying would, and they don't have liquidity. Now, also, when they said, we don't have a liquidity problem, that also is confusing because they just rushed to get over somewhere around $1 billion in credit. Now, here are where my problems, questions, concerns, and confusions lie based on what I've said so far. Firstly, if Robinhood does not have a liquidity problem, Why were the increased deposit requirements to trade or purchase these particular securities a problem for Robinhood if they are doing their own clearing? Secondly, if they do have a liquidity problem, why can't you just simply come out and say that rather than use weasel words that will cause people to assume the worst of you based on your financial relationship with Citadel, who has a financial interest in Melvin Capital, who is about to go bankrupt from shorting the shares of stock that you just disabled trading on? 3. Were there any sort of back and forth emails between Citadel and Robinhood or phone calls that would showcase any sort of market manipulation type behavior? And are we going to get an investigation into that? I still don't want to take it at face value that there was no conversation or shady stuff going on behind the scenes. I am more than happy to be proven completely incorrect in any of my assumptions that something shady was going on behind the scenes with new evidence, but I would also not, frankly, just take their word at face value at this point. Have Citadel or Melvin Capital been honest when discussing their short positions with CNBC and Bloomberg? And if they are dishonest, is there a punishment there for misreporting? If there is a punishment for their false reporting of their short position, will they be punished to a greater extent than the amount of money they were able to make as a result of the lie? As Scott Galloway says, is this going to be a case of having a $75 parking meter outside of your house and a 25-cent ticket? Is there going to be any sort of punishment for shorting to the point of 120 to 140% of the available float of a stock? Were they naked short selling? And if they were naked short selling, who is going to be punished for this and how so? Is this a case where there's just a bunch of players that independently were contributing to the shorts being that high, or was it one or two or three firms? And if it is a case of every single individual in contributing to the short interest being that high, which one gets held accountable? Are we going to have a case where what happened over the past week, if it is distributed amongst a group of people rather than a specific individual or company, are we going to have a case where every individual gets a teeny tiny slap on the wrist because each one was only incrementally involved with this happening, and therefore no one gets punished enough for this to actually not happen again? What are we going to do about the fact that our financial system could potentially be brought down by a greedy short-selling hedge fund and a bunch of people on Reddit that call them out for it? What are we going to do about the fact that there are some good media outlets that actually tried to understand the entire story, but also a lot of other media outlets that were more than happy to use lies and slander, claim alt-right, Nazi, hackers? These people are just buying to manipulate the stock, completely ignoring the fact that there's 120 to 140% short flow. Now that we see the bias inherent in certain institutions and how they cover things, are we going to continue to consider them as authoritative? Now that we see that Discord can say, yeah, we knew, we had a complaint about that Discord for months, but yeah, when there's a hedge fund about to lose money, that's when we're going to censor and just ruin it. What are we going to do about the fact that there are platforms that immediately kick people off the moment a billion-dollar hedge fund is angry, that claim that this was not done because of the hedge fund or being angry or any of that stuff, but just because of hate speech, even though that was going on for a while before? And how do you moderate a room where you have over 500,000 members for a group that has 6 million people and actually watch what is being said in real time when this group is not being run for profit? My Discord server is not there to make a profit for the business. There is no revenue generated by it, so the moderation is done for free. I have 12,000 people, not 6 million. There's a lot of distrust inherent in how everything went on this week. There are times where I would sit here and say, I want all the information and I want there to be an investigation and I don't want there to be pitchforks. Then there are times that I damn near flipped over my chair and said that people should go to prison. To be clear, I'm not saying that individuals should go to prison without an investigation. There should be a proper investigation. There should not be a kangaroo court. Those who look into everything that went on over the past week should look through it with a fine-tooth comb and leave no stone unturned in looking through everything that went on so that in the future we are better off. But I still maintain that someone needs to be in trouble for everything that happened over this past week. Whether it's lying to news outlets, lying about the amount of money that is available in a brokerage firm, lying about your short interest, if you are lying about your short interest, shorting a stock to this point, to the point where you can literally destabilize the entire financial system as we know it, solely because you need to make a couple of extra zeros in the end of your account, destroying GameStop. There needs to be accountability here. Now, have I been 110% correct with everything that I've said over the past week? Absolutely not. And as I've made clear, I am not a financial services professional. I am a MacBook repair person trying to make sense of a crazy world. I don't always have all of the information. Part of why I don't have all of the information is because individuals that do have the information don't put that information out before they make insane moves like completely halt trading while having insane conflicts of interest. And if I have gotten something wrong or incorrect, genuinely incorrect, I am truly sorry. I apologize. I don't want to be a part of there being misinformation out there in the world. When I did my first video on this about 5 or 6 days ago, what I saw in the time were the financial press and media in general really either strawmanning or entirely ignoring the Wall Street bet side of this argument. And as things continued to ramp up, as I saw them called Nazis, as I saw them called hackers and alt-right and pure market manipulators that are just screwing with this, there's no reason that they would purchase GameStop. It's not like it is shorted to 140%. They're just these idiots. I am not a representative of Wall Street Bets. I am not a moderator of Wall Street Bets. No one speaks for them. But what I wanted to do is ensure that the incoming tsunami of what I saw of the talking head types and the financial press types that were going to call these people hackers and evil market manipulators and just completely try to railroad them because they got a hedge fund in trouble, I wanted to ensure that the false narrative did not take hold. I am a MacBook repair person. I am not a financial services professional, but I thought it was important to speak up at the time. If I got information wrong while doing this, if I have sometimes used terminology that is not 100% correct because I fix MacBooks and I am not a financial services professional, I am truly sorry. To be clear, at no time am I representing myself as an expert in this field. I fix MacBooks, I am commenting on what I see happen in real time, and I hope that you all will do your own due diligence, read all around, read every news outlet, read what's going on, read Wall Street Bets, read Bloomberg, read the Financial Times, read CNBC, and then come to your own conclusion. If I have given you misinformation, I apologize. I am sorry. I am not always going to be perfect at this. And by all means, hold my feet to the fire in the comment section if I say something that is blatantly untrue or just has no basis in fact. Before I finish this video and call it a day or an evening at this point, I would like to just read one of the comments that I received on YouTube, which I thought was good, and also my reply to it to sum this entire thing up. Someone said, I hate to say it, but it seems Wall Street Bets refuses to believe this now. They're stuck in the Robinhood corrupt, Robinhood bad echo chamber. And while that is 100% true, Robinhood effing sucks. They're ignoring the truth of the situation. There was a very real liquidity crisis in these brokerages and clearinghouses, and that's what caused the trading restrictions. Robinhood tapped $1 billion line of credit on Thursday for this reason, but they're completely incapable of communicating their intent properly. My response is, I think that Robinhood earned this for themselves with how they chose to communicate this. I think the good that will come out of this is that this garbage method of corporate pseudo-communication will end. To be clear, I obviously have a more populist bias with my take on these issues. I think it stems from my general temperament. But you can't have an arm's-length relationship with Citadel, who bailed out the very hedge fund that was going bankrupt on GameStop rising and then institute a policy that will result in GameStop falling, without being very upfront about why this is happening with details. Not in today's political climate. People have had enough. We get lied to and screwed over by powerful people regularly, and the country is on pins and needles after COVID, out of fear of getting sick or fear of going bankrupt due to shitty economic and lockdown policy. After months of protests, stores burning, Nancy Pelosi on TV with a fridge that costs more than a week of my effing payroll, while Americans wait 6 months for a $600 check, Trump going on about a rigged election, storming the Capitol thing, this shady-ass looking shit happens. The Wall Street Bets people get slandered as alt-right, Nazis, hackers, all in 1 week, while most of the news reports how this has nothing to do with the fundamentals, as if a 140% short squeeze isn't fundamental. These guys are up to here and have had it. They are on edge for reasons I can understand completely. Anything will push them over the edge. This week has been nothing but a shit show. There is no room for BS, vague, PR-friendly half answers at this time in the United States. If you halt trading after a company you have a large financial relationship with bails out the firm who benefits from this, and then give a copy-pasta BS lobbyist-sounding answer, this is what happens. A lot is going to change in short selling. And another thing that I hope changes out of this is a change in the corporate culture when dealing with events like this. Do not send some social media intern out there to type up some garbage that makes no sense. Get out in front of the issue like a man or a woman and tell the truth. We as a country are filled with businesses that speak in these BS PR terms to people rather than leveling us with us like normal human beings. We all hate being spoken to in that way, but it persists. Maybe this will be the end of it. And at this point, I started this video in the morning. You could actually see as the states of the day changed throughout this entire video. I started in the morning time, and it is now about 7 o'clock. So I am going to get out of here and move on with my life. Who am I kidding? Probably 2 hours later, I'm going to wind up just doing an update once a new piece of news is released. But at the very least, for some point in time, I am going to focus on other things other than this. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, I hope you learned something. And that's it.